All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive deep into the inner world, or maybe the lack of one, of all these super intelligent machines that are popping up everywhere. We're going to look at how they see, ask if they can actually feel, and figure out what all of this really means for us.
Okay, let's kick things off with a question that really gets right to the heart of it all. I mean, think about it. We're surrounded by this stuff now, right? You've got self driving cars navigating busy streets, chatbots that can calm you down when you're anxious. They're doing these just incredible things. But it makes you wonder, is there anything actually going on inside? Is the light on, but nobody's home?
So, before we can even begin to answer a question that big, we've got to go back to basics. We have to start with the fundamentals. Before we can even ask if a machine feels, we need to ask a much simpler question. How does a machine even see?
And right away, this shows you a huge difference between us and them. I mean, we see with our eyes and a brain, right? Stuff that's evolved over millions and millions of years. A robot's vision? Totally different. It's more like a technological sandwich of hardware and software, all designed to interpret the world in a way that's just fundamentally alien to us.
So, what does that hardware actually look like? Well, a robot's eye isn't one thing. It's more like a whole collection of tools. It might use a simple 2D camera, kind of like the webcam on your laptop, just to spot basic shapes. But for something more complex, like, say, picking a specific object out of a messy bin, it's going to need 3D vision to understand depth. And then for navigation, think self-driving cars, it often uses something called LiDAR. That's the thing that shoots out laser pulses to paint this super precise 3D map of the world. But here's the key. All of this, it's just collecting raw data.
And of course, all that raw data is pretty much useless without a brain to make sense of it. And that's where the AI algorithms come into play. They take this absolute flood of information, just millions of pixels and data points, and they start hunting for patterns. They'll break an image down into its most basic parts, edges, shapes, textures, and then they compare those patterns to these gigantic libraries of images they've been trained on. And that's how they can finally say, aha, that's a box, or hey, that's a human hand.
And this brings us to the most crucial point. A robot can identify a stop sign with, near perfect accuracy, but it doesn't understand the meaning of a stop sign. It doesn't get the concept of stopping or the danger of an intersection. It just sees a pattern of data points that triggers a pre-programmed action. It perceives, but it doesn't comprehend. And honestly, that distinction, it's everything.
Okay, so if a machine only sees data and doesn't understand meaning, then how in the world are some of these AI systems getting so convincingly good at reacting to our emotions? Well, this is where things get really fascinating and, frankly, a little ethically murky. Welcome to the world of emotional AI. Let's break down the core difference here because it's huge. On one side, you've got simulated empathy. This is what emotional AI is doing. It's not feeling with you, it's just running a really sophisticated pattern matching program. It's analyzing your tone of voice, your word choice, maybe even your facial expressions, and it's picking what it thinks is the most appropriate response from its massive database. It's a performance, it's an act. Then on the other side, you have genuine human understanding, which is built on shared experience and, actual emotional connection. And here's the thing, that performance, it's incredibly effective. Study after study shows that when an AI seems to get us emotionally, we let our guard down. We're way more likely to trust it, to tell it sensitive things. And this creates this really powerful, kind of weird paradox, right? We're building a bond of trust with a system that is fundamentally, by its very nature, incapable of true empathy or care.
And of course, this opens the door to some pretty significant risks. I mean, an AI that's designed to be your best friend could just as easily be designed to subtly sell you stuff. Or we could become way too reliant on these systems for emotional support, which could weaken our real-world human connections. And this is a big one. These systems are often trained on data from just one dominant culture. That means their so-called emotional understanding can be super biased and might completely miss the mark for users around the globe.
So, this huge gap between a really convincing simulation on the one hand and the cold, hard reality of an unfeeling algorithm on the other, well, it brings us face to face with one of the deepest philosophical puzzles there is, the problem of consciousness itself. I want you to think about a really powerful shared experience you've had, maybe a concert, a sports game, something like that. In a TEDx talk, a speaker named Thomas Vinko talks about being at a concert and feeling this incredible, electric connection with the whole crowd. But then he asks this really simple but profound question. Could he ever really know for sure if the people standing right next to him were feeling the exact same thing in the exact same way? And the honest answer is no, you can't. Our inner worlds are totally private. This exact idea was famously explored by the philosopher Thomas Nagel. He wasn't asking about people at a concert, though. He asked about a creature that's way, way different from us. He posed the question, what is it like to be a bat?
Now, what he meant by that is what philosophers call the subjective character of experience. It's a fancy term for a simple idea. An organism is only conscious if there is something that it is like to be that organism. There's a what it's likeness to being it. We can try to imagine having wings and using sonar to navigate, sure, but we'd only be imagining what it's like for us as humans to be a bat. We can never, ever access the first-person subjective reality of what that bat is actually experiencing from its own point of view.
And this poses a massive challenge for anyone trying to explain the mind in purely physical terms. It's what's often called the hard problem of consciousness. See, science is all about being objective, right? It describes things from a third-person perspective. But consciousness, by its very definition, is subjective. It's first person. So if you try to reduce the experience of seeing the color red to just a bunch of brain states and firing neurons, you've kind of left out the most important part, haven't you? The actual subjective experience of redness itself.
Okay, so if I can't boil consciousness down to just physics, and if we can never truly know what it's like to be another being, whether that's a bat or a super advanced AI, then how in the world do we move forward from here? How do we even begin to build safe and ethical AI? Well, the central challenge that researchers are grappling with right now, especially as they work on AGI, that's artificial general intelligence, is something called the alignment problem. Basically, as we build these incredibly powerful autonomous systems, we absolutely have to find a way to make sure that their goals are aligned with human values, that their goals are compatible with our goals. We have to somehow embed our values right into their core decision-making process.
And let me tell you, this is not a simple task, not by a long shot. This flowchart here gives you just a tiny glimpse of how complex this all is. Researchers are designing these incredibly intricate feedback loops to constantly check and double-check an AI's reasoning. Is it sound? Are its goals still aligned with ours? Is its behavior safe? And they have to do all of this before it ever gets deployed out in the real world.
And there is a very real sense of urgency driving all this. Just look at this chart. It shows the number of academic papers published on AGI ethics. It's exploding, a staggering 46%. Almost half of them were published in just the last year alone. The technology is moving at this breakneck, exponential pace, and the ethical and safety research is basically in a full-on sprint just to keep up. So what are the practical steps we can take? Well, based on a big review by an international team of experts, here are 4 key recommendations that keep coming up. First, transparency has to be non-negotiable. You, the user, should always know when you're interacting with an AI, not a person. Second, for high-risk AI, think stuff used in healthcare or finance, we need some kind of certification process, kind of like how new drugs get approved. Third, we have to keep humans in the loop, especially for sensitive applications like mental health or elder care. And finally, number 4, we need much stricter safeguards to protect the most vulnerable people in our society, especially children and the elderly. And all of this leaves us with one final and pretty provocative question to think about. As these AIs get more and more sophisticated, their simulations of emotion, of consciousness, they might become completely indistinguishable from the real thing. So if a machine tells you it feels something, and you can't prove that it doesn't, if you can't prove that the lights are off inside, what do we owe it? What are our ethical obligations then? That is a question we are all going to have to answer, probably a lot sooner than any of us think.